Hello, hello, welcome. I am so excited to be here today. Welcome to Astrology 101 with me. My name is Astrolina or Carolina. Some of you may know me. I'm super excited to share this with you. I have been like thinking of putting on a class now for a really long time, and I've been getting asked to put on a class for a really long time. And so I'm super excited to share this. I have been a tropical astrologer. Well, I've been practicing tropical astrology for about 4 years now, and that's the type of astrology that this class is going to cover over. This is one of, honestly, astrology is one of the greatest tools that I've been given. It's helped me through a lot of like life stuff and helped me understand myself better. And that's one of the Greeks were really big on knowing thyself. That's what they called it. So I'm excited to kind of help you on this journey. So by the end of this course or this little webinar, I would love for you to feel comfortable understanding the lingo, looking at a chart, knowing what you're looking at. So it's not just kind of like mumbo jumbo. This is a very basic astrology class. Few disclaimers, I do curse a little bit. Sometimes I'll drop a few F-bombs here and there. So if that makes you uncomfortable, I don't know what to tell you, Bibs. I'm a Gemini Mars. um, and I have a little bit of ADD, so I might jump around, but that's okay because if I don't keep it exciting, I will say one thing to astrology, although it is one of my favorite things in the world. In the very beginning, when you're still getting your footing on like the words that we're using and what the chart even looks like and what do these symbols even mean, it can get kind of boring. I'm not gonna lie. So we can start really getting into the juice and the real meaty, yum, fun stuff, we kind of got to dive into the technical things because the technical things are really important. Astrology is very technical. So here's the thing about it. As much as I love it, and a lot of it is left up to interpretation of the astrologer, it is still kind of like a science, and there are still some kind of rules that we got to follow here and there to make sure we're giving accurate readings. And that's the foundation that I want to build in this over this next, I don't know, however long this is going to be. I would like it to be pretty short, but I talk a lot, as you can tell. I was just supposed to read this page, but that didn't happen. So I am going to have this to kind of follow along with, but I did do a few practice runs where I was like reading off the screen and it just got really boring. So I'm just going to kind of, refer back to the presentations and stuff, but you got to keep it, cute, keep it interesting. So let's dive right in. So the contents of the class, we're going to go over what is astrology, the types of astrology that you can get into. The lexicon, the words that we're using are really, really important. It's important to know because when people are talking about conjunctions and aspects and sextiles and trines, and you're like, oh, like I'm a baby, like what are you doing? I get it. I threw myself into astrology by learning by reading advanced astrology books, and it was it was a lot. It was kind of overwhelming at first, but I stuck with it because it was like, what else am I going to do? I had a lot of time to study. So the elements and modalities, the signs, the planets, the houses, and the natal chart itself. I should have moved the order of that around. I should have done the planets and then the modalities, or the signs and then well, whatever. We'll get it. We'll get it. We're having a good time. We're having a good time. We're jimming and jamming. We're not gonna worry about that right now. So anyway, astrology. And I mean, if you're already here, you kind of know what astrology is, right? The very basic definition is that it's the study of the celestial bodies in the sky. So not just planets, because it's stars too. So the planets, the stars, the things in the sky, and how they affect us and our human behavior here on Earth, how they affect current events, how they affect, it's like how the astrological weather is affecting basically us. There's a few different types of astrology that you can get into, which is really fun because that means that there's something for everybody. So if you have a fascination with just like personality stuff or helping people with their money and their career and their finances or their relationships, there's something for everybody. So let's jump in. So the type of astrology that we're going to be looking at really in this webinar is natal charts. Really, with the information that I'm giving you, you're going to be able to look at a lot of charts and be able to because I'm giving you the basics, right? I'm helping you like build the building blocks. So you're really going to be able to understand a chart, but the natal chart in itself is different because we're interpreting someone's personality and like what they're probably going to be going through in life, like how many kids they're going to have or could have, do they even want kids? Like you can look at really understand someone's life when you're looking through someone's natal chart, which is why I don't give out my birth charts. That's why I don't need to own my business like that. Okay, so horary. So horary, the word itself comes from the Greek word hora, which means hour, which also in Spanish, it's the word hora, which also means hour. Horary is like when you ask a question, like, will I get a raise tomorrow or a raise this year? And then you cast a chart for the time that you ask that question and you read that chart. It sounds like a lot, but it's actually really, really cool. Electional astrology is event astrology. So this is when you decide the best time to do something based on the astrology in the sky of that day. So for example, if I want to get married, it's just like checking the weather, right? If you see in the weather forecast that it's going to be raining thunderstorms, right? Are you going to go plan a wedding, on a beach wedding, and go stand outside in front of the ocean, and have a bunch of people sitting outside and, well, there's an 80% chance of rain, but let's do it. It's kind of a similar thing. Electional astrology, like for example, if you want to get married, right, you're probably not gonna want to get married on a day when Venus, the planet of love and commitment and partnership, is in bad shape, right? So if she's getting messed up really bad by other planets and just having a weird exchange of energy, you maybe don't want to get married on that day, because everything has a birth chart. Your wedding, your dog, your business, the day that you signed your mortgage, the day you signed your lease, the day that you closed on a house, all of those things have energy, and that's what electional astrology talks about. Medical astrology. So medical astrology is kind of funny. It's a very tricky type of astrology, I will say, because astrology back in the day was much, much, much more commonly practiced. And medical astrology was one of the big reasons why it was practiced, was because, well, medical astrology helps people like diagnose and treat illnesses. I actually have a friend on TikTok who's a nurse. Hey, Sarah. And she really is into medical astrology, and she's a nurse. Like, she has her license, she's practicing. It's really, really cool. So the way medical astrology works is that they assign different planets and zodiac signs to parts of the body and illnesses and drugs and stuff like that. So that's really fun. Relationship astrology. I'm sorry. The reason why I say that medical astrology is kind of controversial is because a lot of people are not qualified to be like practicing. Let me just say this. I personally think astrology works for everything, even death, mental illness, all that stuff. You can see all of that through a chart. But I think because so many people don't know what they're doing, it can get dangerous when that type of information falls into the hands of people who don't know how to use it properly, which is why it's kind of like a hush hush type of thing. It's a very niche branch of astrology, but it is very, very cool, and it is very legit that I've seen. That was my disclaimer. So the next one is relationship astrology. This is kind of my specialty a little bit. This is actually how I started getting into astrology, was that my ex was driving me fucking crazy. And I was like desperate. I was like tarot cards, psychics. And I finally like landed on astrology for real, for real. I had like a fate, like a kind of interest in it, but I was like desperate for answers. And I started looking up everything I could. And I ended up learning about synastry charts. And I learned about relationship astrology before I learned about natal astrology, which is very, very seventh house moon of me. That is very seventh house moon, I'll tell you that. But yeah, so basically that's how I learned. And synastry astrology or relationship astrology is when you look at the energy of two charts combined. So it doesn't always have to be a person. It can be you in a job, you in a city, but most of the time it's two people together. So mom, son, mom, daughter, dad, mom, whatever, you know what I mean? Your romantic partner, your family members, whatever. So there's two types of charts in relationship astrology that you can look at. Synastry is when you take two birth charts of two people and you look at how they interact with each other on a day-to-day basis. So what kind of energy do you bring to each other? Do you make each other laugh? Do you like work well together at home? Do you like to be home? Do you want to be out in the world? Do you feel good? Do they feel warm around you? Do you feel emotionally seen and validated? Does your Venus feel good? Like, that's the kind of stuff we're looking for, right? Now, a composite chart is the relationship itself. So it's not you two. It's when we take the energy of you two, we smush it together, and then we see what comes out. So it's completely separate from that. Then we have financial astrology. I can't breathe. I haven't done the public speaking thing in so long. And I've been smoking like a freaking chimney. So let me tell you something. If I'm like huffing and puffing, oh, I feel like you just hear me going, it's financial astrology. I'm sorry. Anyway, let me collect myself. Thank you. Financial astrology. If anyone has any like stop smoking tips, leave them in the comments below. Okay, so financial astrology. So the natal promise in a birth chart, there is a belief in astrology, the natal promise, right? What that is, let me explain that. In astrology, it is believed that your natal chart holds like a promise, like these things are kind of promised to you, these are destined to you. So that's what the natal chart is promising, right? That's what it kind of means. So when you're doing financial astrology, it's when you look at someone's like birth chart or a business's birth chart too, and you can see the earning potential or the earning capability of that business. So for example, if you look at Warren Buffett's birth chart, his birth chart obviously shows a lot. I mean, he's one of the richest men in the world. He has a lot of eighth house planets. Eighth house is a money house. So you would be kind of studying the financial houses and how they interact with each other in the chart to be able to understand someone's earning capacity and their keeping capacity, because just because you can make money doesn't mean you can keep it. So that's another thing too. It's important with financial astrology. Now, mundane astrology is probably what you are like most used to seeing on TikTok, kind of. Well, or anywhere. Mundane astrology, so it comes from the Latin word mundus, which means mundo, which means the world. And this talks about just like the forecasting of world events, political movements, national occurrences, and cultural trends. So this is when like Britney Spears gets married and I make a video. I'm like, oh my God, Britney got married. Her Juno is doing this. Blah, blah. Sometimes the stuff you see is very cool. I did a video on Gabby Hanna. She's going through some rough transits. That's considered mundane astrology, because you're just talking about like world events. Now, let's do a little tour of the chart, just because. Here we go. We're going to start talking about aspects, and this is actually what the natal chart looks like. So this is actually called a horoscope. This little 12 house birth chart right here is actually technically called a horoscope. Now, what is known as a horoscope are like the little blurbs that you see in magazines and stuff that tell you about your forecast. That is considered a horoscope technically by their definition, but this is considered a horoscope traditionally. Okay, so before I start talking about all this, just know I will kind of be going like I am super ADD, but I keep it interesting at least. So we're gonna be kind of jumping back and forth. So stay, strap in, grab some chocolate, some hot chocolate. I don't know why it's hot chocolate. It's like 99 degrees outside. Okay, refreshment break. Anyway, here we go. This is a birth chart. I'm just gonna give you a quick little tour. Also, this is I use Time Passages, the pro version on my computer and on my phone. This is not sponsored by anybody. I just really love Time Passages. They've always been really supportive of me. And they have a great software and incredible customer service. When I call them, I want not call them, but I'll message them and be like, there's a glitch, and they literally will fix it and be like, let me know if it works. So I really like them. So this is really good. I'm just showing you guys because you need astrology software. You don't need, first of all, hold on a minute. You don't need astrology software to do anything. I didn't get astrology, like serious professional astrology software till I was 2 years in. So yes, while it's beautiful to have and it's an incredible, tool, you can get things done on AstroSeek, which is this little puppy over here. This is one of my favorite websites. It's completely free. It is just an incredible resource, especially for beginners. I actually use AstroSeek when I do readings, because that way they can follow with me and they can click on stuff and read on stuff with me. And it's just an incredible resource. It really is. So I'm actually going to start here because we're going to talk about aspects real quick. So I get this a lot. What is an aspect? An aspect is In math terms, it's the geometrical relationship between planets in a birth chart. Okay. That's the math part. The angles that they're making, that the two planets are making, can be hard or easy aspects or easy angles, right? So let's come over here because that still doesn't make any sense. So for example, all these planets are in a room, but not all of these planets are talking to each other. They're not aspecting each other, okay? So let's look here, right? This is Kim's chart, I think. Why doesn't it say her name? This is Kim's chart. So if we look here, her little, these lines, all these lines, you see how these planets are all making lines to each other? These are called aspects in an actual chart, right? So the blue lines are going to be, let me see here. We have her Venus, her Mercury, Venus right here, and that is making a sextile to, oh no, I'm sorry, it's her, yeah, that's her Venus. Oh, sorry, it's her Venus in Virgo. Sorry, I can't read that. That's her Venus right here. So this is Virgo right here. This is Venus. This blue line right here, that is an aspect, right? And it's making an aspect and it stops right here at her Mercury in Scorpio at 19 degrees. Oh, it's exact. Damn, girl. So if you look here, she has, by the way, I'm just giving you a quick tour of the birth chart. All of these little lines here are going to tell you a story and then which planets are involved. Okay. So I know it looks like mumbo jumbo right now, but once you get comfortable with the glyphs, this is why it's so important. One of the things I really encourage people to focus on when they're learning astrology is if you're really serious about being able to look at a chart and just do it boom, 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 learn your glyphs. They are so important. They are so, 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 so important. I'm also going to teach you guys how you are going to be speaking about charts, right? So when we're talking about this is at this degree, at this thing, I want you to feel comfortable with that as well. Excuse me if I cough. You'll be all right. Okay, so when we're doing this, so let's look right here, right? So a chart, remember that this is okay. There's a lot of math in astrology too. We don't have to do any calculations. You're fine. The computers do it for us now, but it is a very technical, like mathematic thing, right? So when you think about it this way, this chart right here, this big circle, every circle has 360 degrees. Okay. So you got 12 houses, you got 360 degrees. Every sign in your whole sign, at least, every single one of these is going to be 30 degrees. This is actually Placidus. So let me talk about Placidus. I don't want to get everybody confused. Let's actually let's one thing at a time. You see how ADD I am? Let's do one thing at a time. So anyway, it's really important for you to learn your glyphs, because if not, you're just gonna it's gonna be a little bit more difficult. And once you get comfortable looking at this, I promise you, once you get comfortable learning the glyphs, it becomes cake. It's cake. You know what I mean? Like it can't. This is the most intimidating part. Really, is like looking at all of this and being like, what am I even looking at? Right? Once you have a grasp of it, you're going to be good. Gucci, I promise. So what these aspects, what these lines show me is the type of communication these two planets are having. If these lines are red, that means that there's like a little bit of a challenge there. Okay. If these lines are blue, that means it's a good aspect. That means that it's a supportive aspect, basically. Now, I want to talk real quick about degrees, because that is really important to how potent an aspect is, for example, right? So when you think about an aspect, it's the type of conversation they're having, but also how intense is the conversation that they're having, okay? The more far apart the planets are, this is called an orb. The farther apart the planets are, the less, let's do this way. The closer the planets are, the more like important or intense that conversation is. Okay. So for example, we're going to look here. So Kim has her Mercury right here in Scorpio at 19 degrees. Okay. So that means that when we took a picture of the sky, that when she was born, this is exactly where all of these planets were, exactly in the sky. We took their this is it. This is what we got, right? So when Kim Kardashian was born, her Venus, which is this little beautiful friend right here, was in Virgo at 19 degrees, okay, and 36 minutes, because that's a minute, that's what it's called, in the ninth house. This is how you kind of start to break it down, right? This is how you read the placements. And then once you start to get comfortable, you come see this and you'll be like, and that Venus, ooh, opposes her moon and it sextiles her Mercury. So that's what that means. This is how you start to read these charts. So basically what's happening is this is the planet. This is the planet that it could possibly be aspecting. So you got planets here and then planets that it's aspecting. The house the planet is in. Okay. Oops. Go back, Bibs. The sign the planet is in right here. So these glyphs are also important. You're going to be seeing these a lot. These are the planetary glyphs. I'm sorry, these are the zodiac glyphs. Oh my goodness. These are the zodiac glyphs. Okay. These are the planetary glyphs right here. And then these are the aspect glyphs. Okay. So this is considered right here. This is, so like, for example, if we're looking at her chart and we're like, so what is a sextile, right? We're looking at a sextile, for example, her Mercury and her Venus make an exact sextile. So why is it exact? Because her Mercury is at 19 degrees and 48 minutes, and her Venus is at 19 degrees and 36 minutes. They're both at 19 degrees. That's exact. That means that there is a zero. The orb for that would be zero. Okay, because they're exact, completely exact, right? There's a couple other terms too in astrology that applying and separating. So for example, when an aspect is applying, that means that the planet is on its way. It's going to make the aspect. Okay. When it's separating, that means it's already made the aspect and it's on its way out of the sign. So if you'll see, for example, sometimes on AstroSeek, you'll look at the aspects and you'll see those little numbers and it'll say that the orb is like 4 degrees separating, right? That means that the day that you were born, that aspect had already been made, okay? And it had gone 4 degrees before because it's already 4 degrees past the time that it was exact. I hope these things are making sense because these concepts can be a little bit hard to grasp. But basically, when these planets like make contact with each other, they share energy and they tell a story. And the aspects in a chart are really important to telling a story because, I mean, the closer the aspect, the more potent the person is going to feel it. The more like intense the planets involved, that tells a huge story as well. Let's actually dive into the definitions really like briefly so that we can kind of like run around as we'd like. So a conjunction is it's one of the most potent and the most powerful. It's when two planets occupy the same degree or the same sign or are 0 degrees apart. So when you think of the word conjoined, right? So she has a conjunction between her Pluto and her sun. Where's her Pluto and her sun? Oh, it's pretty loose. I don't know if I call it that, but that's close enough. So here we go. So she has her Pluto in Libra and her sun in Libra. Her Pluto's at 21 degrees and her sun is at 28. So there's a 7-degree orb, right? So if you subtract 21 from 28, it's 7 degrees. So, but that's a conjunction when planets are in the same sign. So here's another thing too. When we're talking about the orb, some people, like some astrologers say that like it's only allowable up to a certain amount of like degrees before it doesn't count anymore. I feel like this maybe should have been, this is a tour of the birth chart. I'm like trying to figure out in my brain if this should have been left to the end of the video because I'm like, am I overwhelming y'all? But this is how I learned. Welcome to the show. I hope you enjoy it. I truly hope you enjoy it. Okay, so yeah, so some astrologers, for example, if your sun is at the 1st degree of Leo and your moon is at the 28th degree of Leo, Yes, they're both in Leo and they're both in the same house, but they're not conjunct at all because one planet is all the way in the beginning of the sign and one planet is all the way at the end. So astrologers, me too, we like to see like a really close conjunction. So maybe within, I use six. Use 6, 7 degrees. That's usually like my cutoff point. And that's when it starts. That's when you, because remember, if your sun and Saturn are conjunct at exact with zero space in between, like they were right on top of each other when you were born, that's a little bit more different than if your sun and Saturn are conjunct at 9 degrees apart. It's still potent, you'll still feel it, but it's just not going to probably tell a more as like I feel like the degrees that are very exact are the ones that are really here to tell a story, right? So they might be more background noise. That's how I consider them when they're really loose like that. So a conjunction is when you have two planets in the same sign. The glyph for the conjunction is this little guy right here. Right here, right here, right here. And there, it's not a good or a bad aspect. It really depends on the planets that are involved. So if you have a conjunction between Venus and Jupiter, which are considered good planets in astrology, that's a good conjunction. I'm like, yeah, we love that. But if you have a conjunction between Mars and Saturn, those are considered bad planets or malefic planets in astrology. So that could be kind of tough. So conjunctions really depends on the energy that we're talking about. Now, let me see about the trine. A trine is when planets are 120 degrees apart. This is actually a good aspect. The only thing about it is that it can make people a little bit lazy because things just kind of, if people have lots of trines in their charts, they're just so lucky. And they're the kind of people that can sometimes be like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, I'm doing so good. Like, I don't really need to like strive, or like challenge myself or anything. Like, life is good. I'm happy. I'm chilling. That's lots of trines, right? These are the people who are like walking through, the neighborhood and somebody's like, oh my God, you look like you need a high paying job. Take it. You're, here you go. Perfect. That's a trine. It's a very easy exchange of energy because the two planets are in the same element. So that's another tip too, to remember that. So air and air are always going to trine each other. Fire and fire are always going to trine each other, et cetera, right? So this is a good aspect to have. It's good in moderation. So here's the thing about astrology is that it's very nuanced. So just because someone has lots of oppositions and squares or lots of red lines, people get scared. Sometimes those challenges are what make us move and what make us do things and what make us do great things. It's not always bad. That's an easy way to remember the trines, that they're in the same element. So they understand each other very well. They share energy. You ever seen an Aries and a Leo together? Please. Like that's the kind of easy exchange of energy because they're very similar and they understand each other. So they're supporting each other. A sextile is when planets are 60. Actually, let me show you real quick. This is a trine right here. This little triangle right here signifies a trine between her moon right here and her Mercury, which is this little friend right over here. So I'm also teaching you how to read the aspect tables too at the same time. We're doing a lot of things at once. But I want you to be good after this class, I'm telling you. Okay. A sextile is when planets are 60 degrees apart. Now this aspect also brings, it's a good aspect, but this one requires a little bit more work. Okay. So this is when signs are in compatible elements. So air and fire, earth and water. So you see how she has a sextile between her Mercury, which is in Scorpio, and her Venus, which is in Virgo. Okay, that's a sextile. This little star right here. That's the glyph for the sextile. The sextile is exact at 0 degrees, right? Because they're both at 19 degrees. Are we getting somewhere? We're going to kind of go over what all of this stuff means, but it's really important that we break down like what we're even looking at a birth chart, because if not, we're like, what do these words even mean? So yeah, so the sextile is like, so you see how the other guy with the trine, how the person came up and was like, you need a job, you got a job. Sextile is like this person, the same person is eating lunch at a restaurant and they overhear the guy next to them talking about how they have this great position at this job. And, I just need someone. I'm looking for someone. I can't find anybody to fill it. I can't wait to find someone that can fill it. It's the perfect person. The sextile means that you, the person, has to go up and be like, oh shit, I have to go take this opportunity, right? So the trine is like it's given to you. The sextile is like, oh, okay, now you have a choice. Are you gonna go and like do it or not? So sextiles are good because they provide the good opportunities in the chart, but it's like, do you take them or not? You have to like work to produce the fruits of that labor. It's cute, right? Okay. About to fall off this chair. Goodness gracious. Okay. So an opposition is when two planets are opposite each other. Let's not complicate that. So this is the traditional view of this is that it's a disharmonious aspect that produces tension and conflict. This is one where you kind of have to balance the two energies of this planet to find a good middle ground. She has, let me see which other any oppositions. It's a conjunction. So this is opposition right here. She has an opposition between her Jupiter. This is a symbol for an opposition. So the symbol for the opposition and the conjunction can get a little confusing. The opposition, think of two people fighting each other at the like because they're opposing each other, like they're like opponents, right? That's an easy way. Also, you'll realize that like these it'll be easy to realize which ones are opposites because they're opposites. So when you look at your chart will never say you have an opposition between your Leo Mercury and your Libra Venus. That's not an opposition. So it's easy to kind of figure out which ones those are. So it's kind of balancing the energies of these two planets. Kim's chart is crazy. I should do a video on that. Thanks for reminding me. And a square is when two planets are 90 degrees apart. This is indicative of conflict or challenges that spurs you to build character. So signs in the same modality are all going to square each other. We're going to get into modalities in a little bit, but they all square each other. So for example, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Gemini all square each other, except for the ones that oppose each other. So Pisces and Virgo oppose each other. Sag and Gemini oppose each other. But Virgo squares Pisces, Gemini, and Pisces and Gemini because they're in the same modality. We're going to talk about modalities and how they all express themselves in a little bit. It's going to be a fun ride. Okay, so a square is basically the square. This is an easy one to find out. This is inner tension, honestly. So this is one that, I mean, this is how I describe my square. It's something in my chart that just has been getting, like, it's this constant, like, sense of conflict in this part of my life where the squares are happening. And to the point now where I'm just like, I have to fix it. I have to change. There is no, like, it's either, I can't deal with this forever. So that's the kind of tension. That's the reason why squares are sometimes good, because you get sick of it. And you're like, I have to make something better and bigger out of this. So not always bad, remember. Cute. So we did that. When we're talking about afflictions, an affliction, for example, is when I would say, okay, so oppositions and squares are considered hard aspects or bad aspects. So if you think of the word afflicted, it means that it's hurt by something, right? So if I have my moon, right, opposing, right, my Jupiter, like Kim does, right, an opposition is a hard aspect, so it's afflicted. So I would say how you would say this sentence is her Kim Kardashian's moon is afflicted by her Jupiter. That's a very rare, we don't really say that very often, but that's how you would use that word in a sentence if you needed to. The angles, let me see real quick. Okay. The angles are these 4 houses right here. So the first house, your 4th house, your 7th house, and your 10th house. All these 12 houses, by the way, they all represent a different part of your life. They all cover a different part of your life. And then the planets in these houses and the signs that have governance over these houses, I should have said that at the beginning. These all describe a different part of your life. I really should have put that at the beginning. So when you're looking at a birth chart, because you're like, what is this? These planets all mean something different. They all show me something different about your personality. If you like to, if you have a lot of planets above the horizon, which is this right here, right? This line, because the horizon is when the sun is rising and setting, right? And what is the sun doing when it's going through the chart? It's rising, right? Wait, actually, no, it's this way. And then it's setting. No, yeah, but right. So yeah, so it's rising and it's setting. So when you have a lot of planets up here, this can mean you're a more social person, right? If you have planets below the horizon, which is when the sun is right here in the first or sixth house, if you have a lot of planets underneath the first or sixth house here through this little quadrant, that could mean you're a more private person. So yeah, so that's kind of how the chart kind of starts to come together is the planets, yes, they say something, but they're also communicating with other planets. And when you can kind of figure out what kind of conversation they're having based on the aspect, then you can figure out, okay, well then in this part of her life, in her ninth house part of her life, and her, let me see, her Mercury is in her 11th house. Cute. Very interesting. Her chart's crazy for real. Sorry. But if you can, you're like, okay, so in these two parts of her life are in harmony. And they're both, these two planets are obviously very significant players in her chart because this is a very close aspect, right? So once you can say, like, oh, that if you have the planet of limitations in the house of career, or damn. So Saturn in astrology can sometimes represent the father. The 10th house can represent career, and Libra, of course, it represents justice and legality, because it's the scales of justice, the Libra scales. And Kim Kardashian's dad, Saturn, who was a lawyer, Libra, career. And she's actually very famous for his work as a lawyer. It's also 10th house Saturn. 10th house has to do with fame. So that's how you kind of start to put together these concepts so that you can start to understand, like, find pieces of people's lives and stuff like that. So this little chart right here is going to tell you about the modalities and the elements. Okay, so cardinal, fixed, mutable. Is it fire, air, earth, water? So we're going to go into that in a second, because the modalities and the elements are really cool because it helps you give a little bit more nuance to the actual sign itself. So benefic planets, real quick. The benefic, I went crazy on that. Like, I wanted to describe the angles and I went through like a whole thing. But yes, the angles are real quick. The angles are the first house, the fourth house, the descendant, and the midheaven. So this is the imam coli. How you pronounce that is coli. Coli. So you'll see that sometimes where it says imam IMUMCOELI. You're like, how do you pronounce that? It's coli. So imam coli, the medium coli, or the midheaven, because it's in the middle of the sky, in the middle of the heavens. This is the highest point in your chart, because this is when the sun was at the highest point in its chart. So the ascendant is the constellation that's rising on as you're being born. The fourth house is the lowest part of your chart. That's when it's really dark. So people who have like fourth house suns are usually born in the middle of the night, like around like 2-3 a.m. Well, that's more like 4 a.m. Yeah. Then once you cross the horizon, this is the descendant. This is the sign that was setting when you were born. So it's always going to be the direct opposite of your ascendant. And then this is the midheaven, which represents your outer public life and your private inner life and your private inner worlds. Because it is the darkest, most, it's when it's like when the sun is at the darkest. So people have like fourth, I don't know why that came out so weird. People who have fourth house suns usually very private and very proud of their homeland and their family and stuff like that. So yeah. Then this line up here is the meridian, and it divides a chart east or west. What else was I going to say real quick? The benefics are Venus and Jupiter. So benefics mean that it brings good luck. So if we come over here, it says a benefic or a beneficent planet. They create auspicious character attributes or auspicious circumstances and opportunities. So Venus and Jupiter are going to be your benefics because they're associated with growth, expansion. So Jupiter, and then Venus is associated with love and wealth. We did the angles. So first, fourth, seventh, 10th. Now the chart ruler is going to be the planet that rules over your rising sign. I keep popping back over to the charts. So let's just, I probably should have done that. So when we're looking at your chart ruler, so again, it is a planet that rules your rising sign. The reason why this is so important is because where the chart ruler is actually hanging out in your chart will give me an idea of your like life's purpose and what you're destined to do, right? So let's look at Kim's chart. She's a Sagittarius rising. The planet that rules over Sagittarius is Jupiter. Now, these are kind of concepts that are more, we're going to layer on this cake. Okay. So this is just hang on tight. So in her chart, I'm like getting comfortable because my legs are getting sore. In her chart, her Jupiter is in her 10th house. So her chart ruler is in her 10th house. And the 10th house is a house that talks about fame and career. So we're going to kind of dive into this interpretation in a little bit because I still want to build on these concepts, but she's very famous and she's very career driven. So that really does check out that her life force, her life energy is put into this house. So yeah, so check out where your chart ruler is. It's cool if you have your chart with you to kind of follow along. Let me do this. My legs are like sore because I went to the gym. I've been gymming it lately. So my legs are like super sore. But yeah, it'd be cute if you could like follow along with your chart. It would be cool to see, write things down, take notes about your own chart. So you can kind of figure out like, who am I? Okay, so the cusp is the point at which a sign of the zodiac begins, or it denotes a point or a line where it's the beginning of the house. So a generational planet, okay, so let's actually do this real quick. A personal planet is the personal planets are going to be your big six, right? So sun, moon, wait, I don't think it counts. Yeah, sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. Okay. Sometimes Jupiter. Those are your personal planets. A generational planet is going to be Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Now, it depends on the astrologer that you ask. Sometimes people will say that Jupiter is a generational planet. For the sake of this argument, we're going to say that Jupiter is also a generational planet, right? But some people, again, it's kind of hotly debated. So the reason why it's called generational is because it affects a generation. We don't got to complicate it. The reason why is that it moves really slow. So these planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, have a slower orbit through the sky. So while the moon, for example, will stay in a sign for 2.5 days, Pluto will stay in a sign for like 5 years. And you're like, what? But I have the same Pluto as him. Okay, everybody has the same Pluto as him. That was really funny whenever I got comments like that. But we have the same Pluto. We're soulmates. Babes, Pluto moves really slow. So that means that everybody around you is going to have the same Pluto. People who are within the same age, within about 2.5 years of you, are going to have the same Saturn. That's why they're called generational, because they affect a lot of people at the same time. Personal planets are personal because they're personal planets. They affect you. They talk about your personality and who you are, as opposed to who your generation is as a collective. Okay. Direct is just the forward moving motion of a planet through its orbit in the zodiac. So this is just how all the planets are moving normally. The only planet, this is kind of like retrograde lingo. So direct, retrograde, and stationary, those are all words that talk about retrogrades. And retrograde motion is when it looks like a planet is moving backwards, but it's not. Planets can't move backwards. We just kind of speed up and it looks like because we're moving faster, it looks like they're moving backwards, but it's just that we're moving faster. That's what a retrograde is. That's when a planet is retrograde, when it looks like it's slowing down and we have to like slow down and review everything and just kind of be on point, depending on what planets are being talked about. Like, is it Venus retrograde? Is it Mercury? Stuff like that. When it's direct, it's normal doing its own thing. A dispositor is a term that we use to describe the ruler of a sign in which the other planet appears. So if we're going like, my Mars is in Aries, okay, or no, my sun is in Aries, then the dispositor of your sun is Mars, because that's a planet that rules over your sun. The luminaries are the sun and the moon. So think of the word illuminate, they give us light. They're the two things in the sky that give us light. They're not technically considered planets because they're not planets. The sun is a star and the moon is a moon. But for, just for brevity, a lot of people just consider them planets, but for technicality's sake, they are considered luminaries. Malefics, here we go, are Saturn and Mars. So they cause, Saturn is associated with restrictions and delays, and Mars is associated with combat and limitations, and like having a temper a little bit. So they are considered planets that bring inauspicious circumstances or that can cause like issues in a person's chart. So the personal planets, again, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. An ingress is when we say, if you ever hear someone say, the sun will ingress into Leo on, I don't know, I think it's like August 21st. Don't kill me. Oh my God, I can see the pitchforks from here. That means that a planet is moving into that sign. We did the orb. The orb is the variation in degrees in which an aspect is considered potent. The meridian, which intersects the birth chart from north to south. No, I'm sorry. That intersects it from left to right. And then the horizon, which intersects the circle from east to west and divides a circle into a top half and a bottom half. Orbit is just the path of a heavenly body and its revolution around another heavenly body. We'll talk about stationary real quick before we dive into rectification. Stationary is when a planet is about to move. So when a planet goes retrograde, it stops for a second before it goes into its retrograde motion. And then when it comes out of its retrograde motion, it stops again before it goes direct, right, into its normal thing. So it's almost like like the planet, let's say Mercury, for example. Mercury's retrograde. She's about to go retrograde. She stops. She's like at the airport, packing up all her things, making sure she's stationary. Once she knows she's good to go, that's when she does her little Mercury retrograde dance, right? Then her dance is over. She's coming back. She stops. She's about to go direct. Packing, let me check my passport, whatever. She's stationary. Then she goes back into her direct motion. So that's what that kind of describes. Gotta make sure you're, I don't know. This is what I do at the airport. I don't know about you. A stellium is it's a 4 more planets in one sign in one house. I'm not gonna make it difficult. So we talked about the retrograde already. And I'm actually gonna take a little bit of a break and we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about the dignities of a planet. So I'll see you in a sec. Mwah! Bye.